Next we have our panel session. So we've got 4 wonderful panelists. This session is actually presented by Datisan on the important topic of marketing transformers and looking at how experienced marketers manage disruption and use marketing transformation to do their role. I'm going to read out a bio as I ask them to come to the stage. So can we start with you, Chris? You there? Yep, come on up, mate. Take your pew. Chris is the co-founder and CEO of Datisan. Chris is a digital entrepreneur and data evangelist. He's perfectly placed to host this panel, which is good, because you're about to host the panel, mate.
I hope so.
It's always good, mate. And he believes the true potential in every business-wide decision should be data-driven. Quite right. Next up, we have Jessica. Jessica is the Chief Marketing Officer of Australia Trade and Investment Commission, or Austrade, as we probably know it better. She thrives on leading change and helping people achieve their potential. Welcome. Jarrod, come on up, mate. Jarrod, who is the managing of digital and direct marketing at RACQ. We know each other for a while, haven't we, mate? Welcome to the stage. Jarrod has 14 years' experience in marketing and digital media industry. He worked on well-known brands like QUT, Brisbane Lions, and of course RACQ. And last but by no means least, he just happened to be that way, Sebastian, if you'd like to come up. Sebastian is Google's head of partnership and solutions for the Google marketing platform in Australia and New Zealand. His team work with key suppliers, authorized buyers, channel partners, resellers and consultants that form the digital ecosystem that is Google's technology stack. Welcome all, and I will leave you in Chris's dutiful care. Thank
Beautiful. You. Can everybody hear me? Cool. Thank you very much, Rob. Look, I think before we kick off, just a couple things just to frame up today's discussion. And this morning was a really interesting introduction to a couple of things for me, like obviously the importance of data, the importance of data collection, but obviously not also ignoring the fact that data can drive some really unique content and really unique creativity within organisations. And I think that's something that we might try and weave into today's discussion as well. But I think we can all agree that the way we do business is changing. And that the convergence of data and technology is really disrupting our day-to-day. And from my perspective, I think we can probably all agree as well that I felt the pain of change as a digital marketer and marketing leader, especially over the last decade around the new technologies that are coming to the market, whether it be cloud and what that means. And I saw in a presentation earlier, the importance of risk and managing risk when leveraging things like the cloud to drive decisioning. But also, the cool things like AI, ML, and I'm really keen to unpack that with you guys today. But from another perspective, as marketers, how is this kind of changing how we need to treat, speak to, hold and drive relationships with our customers, and what the importance of this change represents to us as an opportunity to shift the way that we engage with our customers. And today what I wanted to do is really unpack those fundamentals around what data represents to us as businesses and marketing leaders, and talk through that transformation of change and what data actually means. So before we kick off, maybe we'll just start with a couple introductions. Seb, you're right next to me, so why not? Over to you.
Why not? Why not, Chris? Thanks for having me, and thanks for the Interactive Minds guys to have me on the panel. So my name is Sebastian. I work for Google, specifically on the marketing platform. That's our assortment of products that were formerly known and probably familiar to some of you as DoubleClick and Analytics Suite. It's all part of one integrated product solution, and goes from media buying tools to ad serving, measurement, analytics, and A/B testing.
Cool. Thanks, Ed.
So I'm Jarrod. I look after digital and direct marketing at RACQ, and I always love to do, can I get a raise of hands who is an RACQ member or has a family member that's an RACQ member? Yeah, awesome. I love doing that. It's great working for a brand that's so well known, but also so well trusted. So get to work across all our product sets. So traditionally known for our roadside, but we also work in insurance and more recently bank as well.
Thanks, Jarrod.
Jess Hamilton. I haven't always been a public servant. I do work for the federal government, but we're a bit unique in the sense that our job is actually to help Australian businesses go global, generate profitable, sustainable growth in international markets, and attract productive foreign direct investment that help businesses grow, that employ more people, which is a really awesome bottom line to be aspiring to. I've been a marketer for about 20 years, and I've worked for Deloitte, Qantas, IBM, and a stack of other smaller organisations. I love technology, I love transformation, I love it when it's really hard and it's sticky and it's messy, and you can make an impact as a marketer.
Awesome, thanks, Jess. So maybe we might start off at the beginning. So right now, there's obviously a lot of discussion in the market and this trending around hyper-personalisation, right? And that always makes me have a bit of a chuckle around, well, where do businesses start to unpack what we need to do in order to prepare for personalisation before hyper-personalisation, right? So, Jarrod, could you maybe step us through some of those key fundamentals that your business looks at and maybe you look at independently around the right type of data collection in order to set those fundamentals?
Yeah, so the way I like to look at it and some of the journey that we've been on is, I guess, a crawl, walk, run approach. So some of the basics that you need to do, I guess, in that crawl category is firstly just understand the data that you're collecting. There'll be a wealth of data that you're probably already collecting, and you might not know about it all. We certainly discovered plenty of pockets when we were reviewing all the data that we collected. And then as part of that, understand how you're actually collecting that data. So there are probably two fundamentals for that crawl stage. When you're starting to walk, for me, it's looking at your data connectivity and your data control. So the connectivity is looking at how you're getting data in and out of the systems that you use. And the control is then managing where all the data is flowing and across what systems. And then when you get to the run, that's when the shackles fly off and the opportunities start to open up, and where you can start to look at things like identity resolution and creating a single view of the customer, and starting to bring in then the power of the data, so looking at propensity models, predictive models, behavioural triggers, and really start to tap into how I can start to leverage this for my campaigns, both from an optimisation point of view, but also from a targeting point of view.
Awesome. Jess, did you have any comments on this? Because I know, obviously, the background that you just kind of stepped us through, I'm sure there might have been some times where you've set up what a good data collection strategy might look like.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, it really starts with what the business outcome is that you need to deliver. And your marketing strategy and customer data strategy go hand in hand. Absolutely. And it doesn't, if you're a mature organisation and you're running, as you mentioned, in some businesses that I've been in, you have those really sophisticated propensity models that you can rely on to tell you what is the next best offer that you should give to this client, so you can generate some additional revenue and retain that customer and meet their needs better. Sometimes it might be about looking, using all of that data that you've got to create personas and target lookalike audiences if you've got an acquisition target. Other times you might be building a brand and you might not have any customers, but you've got to start somewhere. And taking that approach in terms of just looking at understanding an audience and not just the demographics, not the simple, you've got to take it a step further. You've got to rely on behavioural data, what do they feel, what do they value, and target based on something much more than just what everyone else is competing against. That's not easy to do, and it's unique in every business, but there's huge potential to be unlocked, definitely.
Cool. It might be interesting to throw to you, Seb, because obviously Google Analytics is a huge data collection tool, effectively. Could you shed some light on some of these comments that the guys have taken us through?
So it is a data collection tool, absolutely, thank you. But I think when it comes to personalization, I think first and foremost, it's great to have personalized experiences or hyper-personalized, but at the end of the day, it's important to understand why you're doing this, like what you're actually trying to achieve, and then experiment of what you're personalizing and how that is working. So there's multiple tools and multiple technologies out there, and some work better than others. But I think that now with data collection and experimentation and personalization, we have the tools available to understand what's working, what's not working. So it's collecting, and then it's using that to personalize and create a better experience. But better shouldn't be up to everyone's gut or feeling as to what works, but it should be an actual data-driven decision and then also a decision as to what to then put into production, or what would just drop and not use anymore. So collecting, using, but knowing why you're doing it, and then not leaving up to chance and gut, but actually use data to make a decision as to what experiment and what kind of personalization strategy works.
I think that why is so important. The amount of people that I talk to that are just doing a campaign because they got asked to and don't understand why. Oh, my boss said we need to do this campaign, or a product stakeholder said we need to sell more product, so we'll spin up a campaign. We need to really understand the why. Why are we doing this? What's the purpose of the campaign? But also, what's the why for our customers? What are we solving for them? Why should they care? What's in it for them? I think they're two really important questions to ask up front when you're starting to bring your brief together and doing your ideation.
Sure. And I think that those 2 points that you guys just made, and it was actually the point that you touched on earlier too, Jess, was around kind of that campaign-led versus strategy-led. And I kind of want to just dive a little bit down into that strategy piece for a second, because obviously there's a lot of discussion around having a marketing strategy, and then obviously with the surgence of data coming into play, there should be a data strategy. How do those two kind of align? Is there alignment? What do they actually mean? So maybe the question for you, Jess, is how important is it to align your data strategy and marketing strategy in order to achieve some of that?
It's critical. You can't, you've got to based off insight and really deep audience insights. You've got to have your data accessible. I really liked your, the 3 levels of maturity. You've got to use it. It's really easy not to. Like you can just, to your point, Seb, you have a gut instinct. I actually think it's not restrictive though. I think that can be a bit of a misconception by some people, is that, I have to act off those facts or that data. I actually think it helps us to be much more creative and be more innovative. So that's, and it really helps when you're engaging with senior business stakeholders, because you know how sometimes you have a crazy idea? There's nothing better than it being backed up by customer data when you're in the front of a board of directors or the CEO or your boss, and you've got to convince them that your wild, crazy idea is a really good one. It's amazing what permission you can get to actually push the boundaries, and also that's what people want. The expectation is, from a customer perspective, it doesn't matter whether you're a bank, a retailer, you're working in a pharmacy, whatever it is, the last best experience that anyone had anywhere is the experience they expect everywhere.
Sure. And would you say you approach writing those strategies together, or is it lay out your data strategy first, then overlay it with your marketing strategy? I
think you start with the business. What's the business outcome that you need to deliver? And then how do you work together? How do they work together? And there'd probably be other elements. There might be some organisations have a digital strategy. How many strategies do you want to have? You can have strategy bingo. But it's really how those things actually work together.
Cool. Jarrod, did you have any comments on that one, mate?
I was just going to add, I'm big on collaboration. And I think part of being able to collaborate is understanding what others are trying to achieve. And I was fortunate, we had a strategy presentation yesterday at RACQ, and there was a really great example that was shared by our Chief Strategy Officer, who he talked around NASA and landing on the moon. It's 50 years this week since the moon mission left. I think it left yesterday, 50 years ago. And there was an example where JFK went out to NASA and was meeting everyone, understanding, what do you do? Well, yeah, I'm the rocket scientist, I build this, or I'm that chief engineer, I do this. And then he went over to the janitor who was sweeping, cleaning up, and he said, hi, I'm John, what do you do here? And his response was, I'm here to put a man on the moon. And it just reinforced it doesn't matter what the purpose is of the organisation. If everyone is aligned to that purpose, then that opens up the opportunities for collaboration and working together, all heading towards that purpose.
Cool, and I'd really like to dive into that collaboration bit in a tick. But the thing I might want to just pull out first is the data strategy and the marketing strategy are obviously key critical things for us to obviously move through that crawl, walk, run. What is that doing to capability requirements within our teams? And I know a lot of people that I speak to within marketing teams and technology teams, and where that crossover sits. How, and maybe Jarrod, if you could kick off and maybe then hand over to Jess, and I'd love to hear Seb chime in on this as well. How is that shifting capability within your team, and what does that look like? on the day-to-day?
Yeah, so I guess we're trying to, just really try and work with our stakeholders to go on a journey. So we've done a lot of work around road mapping and understanding what does good look like, and then working out, okay, well, if that's what it looks like, and this is where we are now, how do we start to get towards there? So the tools and technology is almost the last piece, because we're so focused on creating the experience that we want for our members, whether that be just overall or focus specifically on the digital. So we probably start there and understanding that experience and seeing what good looks like, and then work out, okay, well, what are the things we need to take us on that journey and get us to that point?
In one company that I worked in our marketing function, we had a data and analytics team. Cool, awesome. Their job's data and analytics. So if I want to know something, I go and talk to them. It's not sustainable. They were becoming completely overloaded, and people didn't have ownership of actually the data. They didn't have, it became someone else's problem or someone else's opportunity. So we flipped the lid and then got the data analytics team to train every single person in the marketing function, the fundamentals that you need to know. You don't have to learn how to code, but you do need to know how to interrogate data and how to think about data and develop a hypothesis and test it, validate it, and some simple things that everyone could do every day to use and embed data analytics into their work. And I think that's real. That had a huge impact on people's learning and development, but also their output and their effectiveness, both in terms of their KPIs of the revenue that they had to generate, but also the shortening sales cycle. It had a really big impact on the KPIs that they had to deliver.
Cool, and I think we can probably see that coming to fruition this morning through Kathy's presentation around how Strava, obviously, her leading the data analytics function and how they obviously drive that cross-sectional, that cross-functional team effort within the marketing team. There was a thing that maybe, Jarrod, you spoke about before around the tools and platforms, and I might want to, maybe we can unpack, like now obviously we've got our data collection, we have strategy in place, we're starting to think cross-functionally within the team. We understand there's some new capabilities, but the capabilities, to your point, just maybe aren't that technical. And there's some platforms out there to help marketers do technical things in a non-technical fashion. So I'd love to throw to our lovely friend from Google around what are those kind of platforms out there, and how can marketers start to navigate that decision?
So, of course, not all of them need to have they could have a Google brand, there's a lot of great products out there, great solutions. But I think in all seriousness, I think, and it's to Jarrod's point as well, I think one of the, I think there's two major pitfalls, but one main pitfall that we often see out in the wild with customers that I speak to is an obsession with multiple departments making a decision on a piece of technology that promises to do something wonderful, something fantastic, something even better and bigger than the last thing they had bought. And I think the key, I think a key reminder, is probably obvious, but still happens all the time, is that a piece of technology doesn't really solve the problem. There's no pill there, a technology pill that you take and it will do all the great work for you. There's a whole bunch of other things around it. And in fact, there's just some research that we've done. We've teamed up with the Boston Consulting Group to really kind of dive into what does a good solution look like? What does a mature digital marketing business that does things well, what do they look like? What are they doing? What are best practices? What are some of the things that get them from A to B? And we looked at, they figured out there were 4 different stages, from nascent all the way through to multi-moment, it's called. And then there was different enablers within there. And yeah, there were technical enablers, 3. And that was around how data moves between the different organizational silos, how the data is interconnected, and then how automation is being used. I know there's a debate later on today. We believe, and Boston Consulting Group believes, that automation is rather important. You still need a person driving it, but the processes, the software should be integrated and automated. And then how actionable measurement is. That's all kind of part of a good solution, a good platform. Doesn't matter what the vendor is, honestly. That's key things from a technical perspective. And then there's the organizational enablers. And that's, to your question, there's absolutely specialty skills in organizations that are absolutely key. Maybe you need a data scientist or an analyst, someone that can build machine learning models, a campaign manager, a programmatic trader. You may need all those people, or you may partner with someone. But I think the hiring specific resource and people only go so far. Companies that do this well are more mature and more effective. They understand how to connect the different specialty skills with each other. So we have a retailer that we've worked with where they're trying to put everything under the umbrella of customer experience, and they don't care about offline or online or on-site or off-site. They're trying to work towards customer experience and build those specialist teams rather dynamically to work on that objective. Cool. And then other things like strategic partnerships, because you don't have to do everything yourself. You may work with Datisan or another partner. If you do that, what we see companies that are doing this do well is they investigate and question and query the partnership. What value am I getting back in return? What am I paying for? What does transparency really mean? What are the different value add services? Where are they getting me to? Mm-hmm. And then how you structure around agile teams and this is fail fast and then learn from it. We heard this earlier before. Fail fast, iterate, and get better afterwards. And I think that's all important. And the pitfall is typically technology decision comes first, and what can I do with my current specialty skills and people comes second. Mm-hmm. And that's typically, when we look at the slide before that Olivia showed with the brands that don't do so well right now, I think it was Blockbuster on there and someone else, they probably made the same mistake. They look, what assets do we have right now? What people do we have right now? What skills do we have right now? Versus where do we want to be and what do we have to change? Mm-hmm.
And I'll just add on that specialist skill comment, because I think as marketers, you hear a lot that, I need to understand data science, I need to understand, consumer psychology, and it can get quite overwhelming. Holy shit, I need all these new skills that I didn't learn when I went through uni or that I've gained through my experience. And I kind of relate it back to, I guess, my first role out of uni. I was selling an MBA degree and talking to people going, well, why do I need an MBA to be a manager? And we sort of described it that an MBA helps you understand the different areas of specialty. So it's not going to turn you into an accountant, but it's going to give you the tools to be able to know what to ask your accountant. And I would say that are the same sort of skills that you need to learn now as a marketer. So you don't need to be a data scientist, but you need to know what to ask your data scientist to do, or what to ask a consumer psychologist or the market researcher what to do. So really important to learn what they're doing and how you can get the most out of them and not necessarily have to do it yourself.
Cool. Thanks, Jarrod. I think there was a couple of key points that you guys raised around that ownership piece, the specialisation of those skill sets, where they live. And I think I'd love to hear maybe Jess, you comment on how closely aligned does that marketing strategy need to sit with IT? And obviously there was a huge discussion around risk earlier and the risk of being responsible with people's customer data, and Kathy touched on it obviously this morning as well. Is that strategy aligned with the IT strategy, and how does that come together within an organisation?
I think to go to the point around data stewardship, and you talked about who the data and who owns it. I think it's every person's responsibility within the organisation to use and protect customers' data, whatever they're doing, regardless of their role, whether they're in IT or in their customer facing or in marketing or what have you. At Austrade, we are embarking on a journey to redesign all of our client services in order for us to help more Australian companies grow and reach more people, offer deeper services that meets their needs, but also to help more companies. And the way that we're doing that is actually standing up multidisciplinary teams across the organisation, and we're using human-centred design and agile work practices, they're not necessarily always in the same physical space. They might be across multiple offices, but these multidisciplinary teams have people across IT, so they're developers. They bring in legal experience when they need it, but there's user designers, content designers, there's product managers and delivery managers, and they work together, and they are wholly and solely focused on what is the client's problem, what is the opportunity, and how can we meet their needs better. And you would typically think that those sorts of processes would take a long time. The beauty of Agile is you make it happen really quickly. And for a government department, we have recently stood up a team to look at how we can better services companies wanting to go global. And we've developed a product within 12 weeks that we launched as a beta on a digital platform, a website that's not our own, because we know that's where those companies are seeking help. And we released it as a beta and said, help us make this better. But we did it in 12 weeks. Now, that's hard to do no matter what any organisation that you work in. But if you bring the right people together, focus them on a problem, empower them with the tools that they need to be able to collaborate, and back them, it's amazing what can happen. It really is quite phenomenal. So we're scaling up, building these teams at the moment to design these services, deliver these services, take them to scale. It's really exciting, but it only works when all of those capabilities come together, and marketing play an absolutely critical role in those teams.
Cool. Thanks, Jess. Jarrod, did you
And I'll just add, I couldn't agree more on the responsibility piece. At RACQ, doesn't matter whether you're a patrolman, you're in the contact centre, you work on product, or you're in the marketing team. Every single staff manager has to do privacy training every year. It's mandatory. If you don't do your privacy training, then you're not eligible for any staff incentives or bonuses. So it's so important. I think organisations as a whole need to own that responsibility, and staff make up organisations. So yeah, a really important piece that just not one team by itself can own that, because so many people touch and influence the data, whether it's collecting it, bringing it together, or leveraging it for campaigns. There's so many stakeholders involved.
Yeah, we'll just quickly add, because I think it's a big priority for us and then the whole ecosystem is, I think increasingly responsible marketing is not a choice anymore, but it's just a new reality. I mean, in Australia, it's still a little bit optional in a way, but I mean, you can bet on some legislation, regulation coming our way in terms of how data is being used. So use a strategy around data that is focused on, sure, what do you want to do with it and why you want to do with it, but then with a chief privacy officer or a compliance officer that then understands, are you allowed to? Does it respect the user choice, user transparency, user control? And then you're left with what you can do. And then I would still as a marketer, I think you should still then question yourself, should you? And I think that's kind of the new funnel and the new reality that we all live in. I think the times when, I think 3 years ago, I'm sure on some conference I said, data's a new oil, and collect the data, make it work. There's the days of the era of precision was all about collecting cookies and user IDs and then targeting one-to-one messaging. I think it's over. Now we are in the era of predictive marketing. That's because we have to respect user privacy, data privacy, user choice, and user control. That means we have to live with less data and probably have to live in a world where it's less about knowing exactly who we target, but thinking we know that we target probably just the right person with the right message. And that comes to machine learning and predictive algorithms, which is your forte.
Well, it's a good segue then we've only got a few minutes left, and I'd love for Seb, if you had any examples around the use of, say, AI at scale that you could share, whether it's anonymously or you could mention a specific use case with us.
Yeah, there's one project we're right now. Usually it's around like connecting data, different points. We're working with or usually it's about CRM data, point of sale, your site data, marketing data, ads data, connecting all that together, and then not just to get more visibility into your true ROI and drive better insights, but use it for predictions. So we work with a automotive company that wants to send better target messages in a more relevant way to their potential customers. So they've done a propensity model to understand, based on previous purchase behavior and user behavior on the site and in the store, decide what type of behavior do people exhibit that are more likely to buy a certain car. So this propensity analysis now allows them to segment and know very early on what kind of messaging to send to a customer. And it doesn't stop there, or potential customer. It doesn't stop there as soon as someone buys the message. I mean, you've all been there where you bought a trip and then you still get the same remarketing ads after you bought the trip for the same trip. To remove them from and put them on suppression lists, so get a better user experience. So that's something I think that's tangible and alive and well. And then I think one thing that's fairly fascinating, I thought, was optimizing page load times. Like, we know that every 100 millisecond or so of page load time decrease the conversion rate by 7 to 10%. Multiple studies out there. So what that marketing company or that organization was doing was to use machine learning based on previous user behavior on the site to predict the next 5 pages that were likely to be visited by that person, and then preload those, prefetch those. And they were able to reduce the page load time by I think 80 or 90%, and then drove conversions up by 7%. So I think it's a little example of machine learning done well. It's all about the data you have, but then how do you put it to use to not just create insights, but a predictive model that relies on less data collected going forward.
Thanks, Evan. I think to kind of help us start to wrap up, because I think we kind of stepped through, what we need to do and some of the considerations we need to make in order to get to that future state, understanding that our current state is going to continuously get disrupted as we go, and we need to have an open mindset around, changing the way we market and some of those responsible things we need to consider. And I like the way you kind of coin what you should do, not what you can do, because I think we need to start considering that now. If you guys could share one final tip with the audience around where to get started on this journey, and a lot of people are at different stages on this journey around modernising the way they market to their customers, what would it be?
Start with what you're trying to achieve, and then find the right tools, technology, platform, or whatever it is, or build the right capability to meet that. Not just because it's cool, you should. That said, there is something cool that I want to share with you that you could use today as marketers. So IBM Watson Tone Analyzer is, you can do like a free trial, and basically what you do is you can chuck a bunch of text in it, and it will tell you what emotion you have conveyed through that expression. So joy, fear, anger. It tells you how confident those assertions are as well, and you can just like Google it and chuck stuff in there, and it's really good with customer data and other bits and pieces. But I think one of the other bit is that we know that emotion fuels response, and as marketers that's what we're always trying to do, is infuse emotion and tap into something like whether it was a Strava this morning or Chobani. Everyone's trying to do that. It's a really good way to keep yourself honest, to see whether or not is this driving emotion. It's not just the tone of voice, is the emotion in there, and you can use it for free.
Thank you.
I'm going to use that tool. So one for me, so we talk about members, but for a lot of businesses that's customers. And my tip kind of comes from our group CEO, where he talks to us about always asking ourselves the question, does this help the member? Is this in the best interest of the member, or what will the member think of this? And the thing he actually gets us to do is save a spare seat in all the meetings that we have, and then imagine the customer or the member is sat in that seat, and then try and look over that seat and go, okay, what would that person be thinking about what we're talking about, or how we're bringing these ideas or this campaign together? So really simple, but really easy one to try and sort of make sure you shift yourself into that mindset and make sure that what you're doing is keeping that customer or member in mind.
I would just want to leave you with comfort. This research piece we did into digital marketing maturity in Australia, there were over 50 companies surveyed, and only one was in the most mature stage and doing everything right. So if you're hearing a lot of great things today, and you're thinking like, oh shit, I'm not doing any of those, don't worry about it. You're probably not alone. And then I would say, when you talk to tech vendors, including myself, don't get carried away about all the cool things you could be doing. Ask yourself about the things you want to do, and then make a decision on this.
Awesome. Thank you very much, guys. It's really been fun. Back over to you, Rob.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, team. Amazing.